Now, we want to keep our attention on food safety. The global food system is built on the convergence of people, plants, animals, the food products that come from them, and the environment. The health of one affects the health of all. And so the next panel is going to be delving into the questions of, as we produce ever greater quantities, how can we continue to maintain a safe and healthy food supply? So please welcome to the stage our moderator for Healthy Food Systems panel, my colleague Dr. Martín Carcasson, Associate Professor in the Department of Communication Studies here at CSU.
I'm going to open this up a little bit more so everyone can see.
Take it away.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to first just bring our panelists up there. You see their names up there. So we have a very distinguished panel today. Dr. Alan Rudolph, who's currently the VP of Research here at CSU. We have Kelly Green, who is the owner and a third-generation chairperson of the board at Birko. We have Dr. Mike Stetter, who is currently the Dean of the College of Veterinary Medicine and Biomedical Sciences. Dr. Laurie Scanlin, who's a principal inventor, which is a great title, principal inventor and CEO of Keen Ingredients. And then Carlos Saviani, which is the vice president of the World Wildlife Fund, right?
Yes.
Sorry. I just put WWF, and I know it wasn't a wrestling thing, so So I'm gonna start us off by framing the panel a little bit here for just a couple minutes, and then we're gonna ask kind of an opening big question, give them some time to kind of dig deep, and then we'll just kind of play off that conversation for a while, and then still leave hopefully a good 10 minutes at the end. But my role here at CSU, I'm the director of the CSU Center for Public Deliberation. I focus on helping communities address difficult problems. And I focus particularly on what's called wicked problems, which are these problems that are very systemic and are dominated by kind of competing underlying values and natural paradoxes that make it very difficult for us to address well. The wickedness of these problems are typically worsened by communication processes that are not designed to take on those tensions and deal with those paradoxes. Our public discourse is often dominated by adversarial voices that strategically frame things in very narrow ways, or expert processes, which similarly tend to kind of focus on particular aspects of broad problems. The problem is wicked problems really call for different communication processes and much more engagement. So this panel's title is A Healthy Food System: How Can We Achieve Safe, Secure, and Plentiful Agriculture? And certainly a healthy food system, or the quest for a healthy food system, can also be framed as a wicked problem. So from this outsider's perspective, I do lots of issues. I've done some on food, but I'm still an outsider focused on food. Here are just some of the competing underlying values we deal with. We want healthy and nutritious food. We want safe and secure food. Economically, we want agriculture to be a viable, thriving industry. We want agricultural workers to be fairly compensated. We want a healthy environment. We want to treat animals ethically. And perhaps most importantly, if the we is kind of the general public, we want food to be delicious, convenient, and affordable. Now, not all of these are necessarily competing values, but several inherent tensions do seem to arrive. We can't get more of what we want without also getting less of something else we want. So tackling the wicked problems requires us to kind of step back, see the broader connections, and take on the difficult task of working through these tensions. Now, the ideal reaction to a wicked problem is what this summit's all about, which is innovation. Innovative ideas can make possible new realities to transcend some of these tensions and paradoxes and find new ways to move forward. So this panel is a distinguished collection of scholars, advocates, and business leaders who are going to share their insights and their experiences about this ongoing quest for a healthy food system. So I just want to ask them to kind of introduce themselves a little bit more about how the work they do connects with healthy food systems, and specifically kind of what innovations or initiatives have they been involved with or otherwise support that are particularly promising and can help us negotiate these broader tensions. So we'll start with whoever's ready to speak, and then we'll just go to that person's right.
Hi. My name is Mark Stetter, and I have the privilege of being the Dean for the College of Veterinary Medicine and Biomedical Science. Quick background just to frame up kind of where I'm coming from, if you will. I started as a zoo and wildlife veterinarian working for a variety of zoos in the nonprofit world. Then I ran off to work for Walt Disney World for about 15 years as an executive, and got very involved with corporate responsibility, environmental sustainability, working for a large corporation, and then have been here at CSU for about 2.5 years, and obviously very interested, both from a research, teaching, and service perspective, how can we make a bigger difference around the world. And I wanted to share one area that I think is a big initiative here at CSU and involves a lot of key partners, and that's what we call a One Health initiative. And so when we think about how interrelated health is, and when I say that animal health, human health, environmental health are all so tied together in our future, and yet we haven't organized ourselves either at universities or government agencies to fix these or solve these or deal with these problems in a significant way. So we've started a One Health initiative that pulls all 8 colleges that are here at CSU, along with our 3 schools, including the School of Global Environmental Sustainability and Public Health, along with government agencies that are right here in our backyard, the CDC, National Park Service, the USDA, National Wildlife Research Center, and then working with industry to say what are the big problems and how can we work together to deal with those. And those might be food safety security, emerging diseases, sustainable agriculture. All are big things that we deal with on a daily basis, and yet if you look at our government agencies or even at the university level, we haven't united to say from a problem perspective, how can we work together to solve them? So our One Health initiative is starting to do that, and we are hoping that when we can deal with diseases that might be right here in our backyard, and we certainly know there are plenty of them that commonly affect both animals and people, but also looking at faraway places, and sometimes far away comes right here to our shores. Certainly Ebola virus is a good example of that. But if we look at recent problems with diseases in pigs or poultry that have devastated agriculture and have huge impact to human health, there's a variety of things that we all need to be working together more collaboratively about.
Hi everyone, I'm Laurie Scanlin, and I have spent my career as a food scientist in the industry working for small companies and very large companies, US and international food companies. And I went to CSU, I'm an alumni, and I was a food scientist for many years, went back to work on my PhD at CSU, and it evolved into a lifetime passion on quinoa. I have a US patent on quinoa from my dissertation research. And my area of science has always been very dedicated to healthy foods, safe foods, and more nutritious foods. And I'm still working with quinoa. I now am involved with a group that supports about 45,000 smallholder farms in Bolivia and Peru, which is really just continues my passion for the crop, which is happens to be a drought tolerant and crop that survives in marginal soils that are a high salt, which happens with a lot of changes in the environment and a lot of water changes. So what I'm doing now, besides working on quinoa to continue innovation, is really a collaborative effort. I'm working with 75 plus scientists from around the world looking at our land, our water, our resources, and from a global perspective, assessing, proteins. A lot of people think of proteins of just meat and dairy. We understand with a growing population that meat and dairy is predicted to double with more affluent countries wanting more meat and dairy. So this whole book is designed to assess what are the other proteins out there that we can grow sustainably and promote. And those proteins on this book include quinoa. That's why I got involved. And there are also amaranth, hemp, insect protein, mycoprotein, which is a fungus, algae protein, other sources that we can live on, because basically on a fundamental level, we need proteins to survive, and so do our cattle and fish. And so it's a real collaborative effort. It's certainly not myself.
And I believe we'll have some insect protein in the next oh, we won't? Oh, I'm sorry. And Kelly.
We could.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kelly Green. I'm actually the 3rd generation owner of Birko. My grandparents started the business in their garage. Some of you know some of the greatest things were made out of a garage, right? In the focus of food safety 63 years ago. Now, if you think back 63 years ago, food safety, what was that, right? The question that my grandfather, who was I call him a mad chemist, but he was a chemist, but also a salesperson, understanding the customer, saying, you know, what keeps you up at night and what value can we bring you? And carrying that question from 63 years ago to today, wow, has that ever changed substantially? We work with some of the largest protein processors, JBS being one of them, Cargill, some of the larger breweries, and now produce, because food safety is such a serious issue. Where Birko comes into play is we bring sanitation, chemistry, equipment, and data and technology to our customer. And what we're hearing today is when we ask our customers what keeps you up at night, it's, can you help us keep our food clean? Can you help us keep our food safe? I don't want to kill somebody because of the product that I'm producing. And if you would have said that 63 years ago, I mean, my word, the food processing industry certainly isn't making weapons of mass destruction. So it has become that serious. And we have worked with many partners, CSU being a strong collaborator and partner with new chemistries that we're working on innovations to be able to implement into the process of the food industry to help reduce those foodborne pathogens such as Listeria and Salmonella and E. coli that you hear of today.
Carlos?
Yeah, I think that was a very good segue to what I would like to say. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carlos Saviani, Vice President of Animal Protein for WWF. A lot of people ask me what that does that mean. I mean, isn't it WWF about protecting the panda and other wildlife? So now are you going to be protecting cows as well, or what is that? The thing is, in a nutshell, we hope that in the near future, food sustainability will be perceived and will be sustained as food safety today, as it's something that it's a must-be, right? I mean, you don't go to a supermarket and you select products based on seals, saying, hey, I'm more safe than this other food. You expect that everything is safe. And we hope that in the near future, all foods will be sustainable. And we work with industries, and I'm part of a team that is a food sustainability team. We are more or less 20 people, people that are, some of them are environmentalists, some of them are scientists, some of them are a mix of everything. For instance, I'm an animal scientist with an MBA, and I always work for the private sector. We have former employees of Cargill, Procter & Gamble in the team, people that were farmers in the past. And we work with different industries, especially the ones that are connected to commodities that have the highest impacts on the environment, forming roundtables, multi-stakeholder engagements, and that's how we believe we can tackle the sustainability problems. And we form those roundtables to first define what sustainability is for that commodity. We evaluate the supply chain, the whole value chain of that commodity, and we look at the risks, we look at the life cycle assessments and what are the major footprints of those value chains. And then we work with all the players of the industry to define principles and criteria and indicators and even standards to define what sustainability is for that commodity, and then to help them to improve those indicators or improve the standards to make the production of the consumption of those foods more sustainable. And we have initiatives with aquaculture. We are found members of the ASC, Aquaculture Stewardship Council, that has a certification program for aquaculture. So if you're thinking in developing aquaculture here in Colorado, make sure you follow since the beginning, the guidelines of SC to guarantee that you're going to have a sustainable aquaculture here. We also have the MSC, the Marine Stewardship Council, that has also a certification program for wild-caught fish. Cindy mentioned today the Dairy Sustainability Council, which is also a multi-stakeholder engagement that we represent, civil society there with a lot of other players. Fields to market for raw crops. For soy specifically, there's the RTRS. Bon Sucro for sugarcane, and there's one similar to palm oil. And more recently, we created, together with the industry, the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. We defined the principles and criteria for globally. And the GRSP has more than 75 members like Walmart, Costco, JBS, the Canadian Breeders Association, the NCBA here from US, and producers from all over the world. And now we are expanding that global roundtable into the countries to get into the more specifics and to define the indicators and then how the verification programs will work. So we just created the US Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, and it's proudly located here in Colorado. And Mark, I hope you become a member, since you want to, as you said, you want to work with the whole industry, and that's a very broad initiative. It has already 55 members. It was created just 2 weeks ago. All the packers are there. Pretty much all the feeders associations from all over U.S. and all the cattle breeder associations. NCBA is there for sure. Along with us, there are other NGOs, even Solidaridad is all about, social aspects. And that's something important, for all those roundtables, we look at the triple bottom line approach for sustainability. So it's not only about environmental aspects, but also social and economic. And through those roundtables, we believe, we can change, those industries and make sure they are sustainable moving forward.
Carlos?
Good afternoon. I'm Alan Rudolph, the Vice President of Research. It's a real pleasure to be here. I want to say a few things about my background relevant to this, but I really want to stress what a great time this is for food security and food safety, food systems, research development and impact against our land grant mission here at Colorado State. We have so much going on here across our different colleges in this area. And it is one of these very wicked problems. Like one of the things, it's a relatively new area for me. I'll speak a little bit about my background and how it touches this. But as Vice President of Research, I can tell you almost every week I get a new company locally in the area interested in this, a new technology or a new discovery here on campus, a new ambition or energy of a group of people here that want to come together and work on this problem. It really is one of the grand challenges of our day and of one of these wicked problems. And I really do think it's one of these very unique topics that can galvanize true cross-disciplinary action. We give a lot of lip service to the word interdisciplinary. In this kind of area, you can't make progress without bringing together these vast lenses of perspective, of opportunity, both across the scale, from disruptive discoveries all the way to the social sciences of how are you going to change behavior. So it really is one of these wicked problems, and the communication that is going to be required to solve it. And we've thrown around a lot of numbers. The one number I heard, I think you might have heard Craig Baruti at the beginning of the day saying we were just in Abu Dhabi at an international conference on this. And still being a student of this issue, you've heard a lot about 2050 to population. That's really only 34 growing seasons. That's not a lot of time. And so we really are going to have to galvanize ourselves in new ways around this. I've been very lucky. I've been working on wicked problems most of my career. I don't know how much progress I've made in them, but I've been fortunate to be in organizations that really look at disruptive technologies, organizations like DARPA, small companies I've started myself to take on big problems like Alzheimer's disease. So, you know, when you have a wicked problem like this and you have to bring people together, it really does require sort of new ways of thinking and new ways of practice. We started here on campus in the last few months a program called Catalyst for Innovative Partnerships. And that program was really to define, have teams, cross-disciplinary teams across campus come together, passionate about a wicked problem, and have the university really sort of prime the pump for them going out and chasing solutions around these wicked problems. One of these teams was led by Greg Graft, Matt Wallenstein in the room, around innovations around sustainable ag. So, you know, we are really galvanizing ourselves in new ways to try to attack these complex problems. And, you know, in that team, you've got the representation of our great atmospheric sciences, you've got public health, you've got a number of groups, people from different backgrounds coming together. You know, the one or two places I have touched this area that I would like to just represent because I think they show the tremendous potential. Not only, I mean, I know we've said many times it's about the information and collecting the information in new ways, analyzing the information. There are some who will say we really have the technologies we need. We just need to figure out how to use them or organize them better. I'm not so sure that's the case. I mean, I'll give you an example. In a foundation I started 6 years ago, we did a large project for Nestle Corporation called Taste Sensomics down in Sao Paulo, Brazil, where we were doing a clinical trial to basically determine, based on taste and genome, could companies like Nestle formulate products in different parts of the world that would have different tastes based on the genetic makeup of that population. And we're learning enough about the genome and the taste perception, the receptors on the tongue, this is possible. Satiety, the neurosciences world is telling us, when do you become feeling full? How do you become feeling full? How can we manipulate those kinds of things? These disruptive discoveries will have major impacts on discussions around food security. Another example in my career, last few years worked a lot on surveillance. Food security had a different connotation in my world. You may know the world of sort of biosecurity, people who will use biology against us as adversarial, with adversarial intent. And it turns out the historical precedence for this activity is mostly in the food world, where we've had purposeful contamination of food. So this food security has a different lens in some parts of the world around safety. But clearly, one of the themes we've heard, and another Catalyst team we started, was on real-time data collection. We now have in our pockets the ability to take our smart devices, link them up to very cheap, affordable, highly distributed systems, and gather up our own information. So the democratization of intelligence against the food system is a really powerful trend that we're seeing, so that in the future you may walk into a farmer's market and with your cell phone and a simple device be able to tell, is that really the product they're saying it is? Does it have residual contaminants that I might be interested in? And so this kind of real-time reporting and real-time sensing, we see it now in the use of drones, but it's coming right down into our pockets, and we are going to see it really affect abilities in things like food systems. The last thing I'd say is the engineers are getting engaged. The food system is not, as we've heard a course of the day, is not standalone. It's very much involved with water and energy. We're seeing that both in sponsors in the federal level. We're seeing that in corporations that are paying attention to that and sustainability. And we're also seeing it in the way we approach it. And so our engineering colleagues are getting engaged. And we're thinking about food systems as engineered holistic systems that we have to optimize in new ways. And I think that's a very healthy trend that we're going to see here both on campus, in our partnerships with industry and others, and how we approach this problem. And I think that's a very positive step for the food security and food systems world.
So I wanted first to kind of give you all a chance that y'all have heard each other. We've had some conversations over lunch, things like that. So I don't know if y'all have any questions for each other or something that you heard from someone else that sparked something that you kind of want to throw out real quickly.
Well, Alan brought up something that makes me want to ask Kelly regarding the real time. I think it's fascinating because the millennium generation, millennials, I love learning from because they drive a lot of innovation with their ideas and purchasing power, and this traceability is something that not only has food safety purposes, but also we can learn where our food is coming from, and more and more people want to do that, and so we can connect technology, which some investors in Colorado as well as in the Bay Area are starting to think about. How do we get real-time information on our products that we buy? Because believe me, the food industry is tracking every single product that goes through the checkout, and now consumers are finally able to learn a little bit more back from those products.
So I'm going to take a spin off of that of the food safety piece and technology. Birko actually purchased Chad. I don't know if you know the brand name Chad. It's a household name within processing plants of equipment. And our strategic thought around that was they manufacture throughout the years, they've just had a very staunch reputation of building equipment that is, you can clean it. And you go into many of these processing plants, and I will not say the beef industry because that is not true as of today, but other industries, they are the equipment that is used to process the actual food itself is nearly impossible to clean. And that is a big issue because, gosh, that's a huge capital expenditure for some of these family-owned companies that have been around for generations, processing produce and other items that they just are faced with, that they have to really organize and change their operations and their engineering side. The technology piece and the data piece is so important for the fact that if the product is going through a wash, now it can be detected to say, all right, this product has had an intervention applied to it, an organic intervention that is reducing that log reduction. So therefore, it is meeting some of those requirements of the government that is pushing down further and further. And gosh, I was gonna say really how that ties into the overall consumer and how the consumer's behavior is today. I keep going back 60 years ago. Well, when's the last time, maybe even 20 years ago, did you walk into a grocery store and pick out a clamshell type packaging of fruit and eat it on the way to the car because you were in a hurry? The whole consumer behavior has changed, and of course, the consumer deserves that safe food, but it also goes back to the technology of how that food is being processed and making sure that the technology and the equipment can be cleaned, can be sanitized in order to have that check off of food safety.
Anything else between each other? Or?
I know at lunch we chatted a little bit about how public perception of animal welfare and safety may be driving consumer purchases, and from what are the things that the consumers are going to make decisions about, and is part of it not only safety, security, but is it how the animal was handled, or what were the practices in place? And I'd be curious of people's thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's one study. I don't know if you saw the Green Dex that has been done every 2 years by National Geographic. It's looking at the consumer behaviors and understanding of sustainability, and sustainability in a broad sense. So they ask questions about animal welfare. They ask questions about residues in the food and how food is produced. And it's interesting because they have been doing this since 2008 among a series of different consumer goods. And they found that food in particular is the item that the consumers are most concerned about it when it comes to sustainability. It's a lot because of the animal issues, but not only that. And it's the one that is fast growing. I mean, every 2 years they see a growing trend of more consumers being concerned about that. I have a few numbers here. I invite you all to go to the National Geographic website and look for green decks. But 55% of all the 18,000 people they research in 18 different countries, 55% they want to know where the food is coming from and how the food is produced. That's globally, I mean, among all those 18 countries. In US is 49%. So US and they have an index, a sustainability index that they calculate, by looking at all the questions they ask. US, unfortunately, is at the bottom of the list in terms of being concerned about sustainability. India, China, South Korea, and Brazil are the top ones where the consumers are the most concerned about sustainability. And we think there's a big correlation with food safety because, I mean, consumers don't understand, clearly what sustainability means. And a lot of them, they mix it up with food safety, elements. But this is staggering. 63% of all the people that got interviewed, they said that food they have the perception that we should change the way food is produced. They are not happy with the way food is produced today. And that number in US is also lower, it was 50%. But I think, we're going to look at the trend that this report is presenting to us, and it's a very serious study. I think you're going to see a growing trend of consumers, especially, the millennials and women, trying to understand better, how foods are produced, and they're going to start to ask a lot of questions about how animals are handled, for instance. And I think it's already happening, right? I think we have seen that happening.
So it sounds like, I mean, a lot of y'all are kind of agreeing that the consumer is considering multiple variables now, right? I mean, the easy way to think about it is consumer wants it cheap and convenient in a sense. But you're saying they're more kind of caring kind of how animals are treated and those type of things. They're caring more about, I mean, are you saying that even when you started off of the 3 generations of your company where food safety wasn't an issue, now what's driven that change? Is it the consumer that's driving it? Is it science that's driving it? Is it the industry? Or obviously kind of a little bit of each, but as we move forward, what's most important?
Happen, right? The people that die because of contaminated hamburgers, I think that create a big movement to change, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, gosh, you get a Happy Meal at McDonald's now, and you can get it with sliced apples. Well, those sliced apples didn't come off the tree that way. They had to be processed. And the way they were processed, was it processed in an effective, safe way, particularly for children eating the Happy Meal. And so that, it's that wicked problem of what does the consumer want versus what are they going to sacrifice to get that?
A question about for our industry folks here about the Food Safety Modernization Act and whether, it's interesting. I worked in the diagnostic industry and the medical side, and because of the FDA hurdles of getting through human medical clinical trial design, a lot of those multiplex diagnostic platforms moved over into the food sector, led by an interest of companies like Starbucks, Coke, Mars, who were positioning themselves perhaps for greater regulation on measuring things in the food processing process. Are you feeling that pressure yet? And how is it changing your practice and adoption of innovative technology?
Wow, great question. And there is a movement in globally, and the U.S. is partnering with scientists worldwide. Global Food Safety Initiative that started in England is now being utilized at not every company, but it's starting to. And basically, it's tightening our cleaning practices, our food safety assurance, and it affects food production. Absolutely.
So you're measuring more things?
Measuring more, cleaning more, looking at different kill steps to still protect the nutrition but still reduce the microbial load of product and without affecting taste.
Do you have a response to that? Or?
Well, I look at the beef industry and the protein industry. They went through FSMA 25 years ago. And
FSMA is?
Food Safety Modernization Act.
Okay.
And so the beef industry gets it. They have been through the tranches on that. They could write the book on that. It's the other industries that it's this tidal wave that's coming down the pipeline where they're saying, gosh, you know, I'm trying to just produce food here. Again, we're not trying to make people sick. We're not trying to create a weapon here. And the press has a tendency to create that image. Well, they have a lot of catching up to do, unfortunately, and I think there's a lot of avenues to become educated in FSMA, and the partners and the universities and people like Birko are helping those processors get there quickly. I think it's, you know, again, going back to the technology and what the consumer really wants today and how they want their food prepared and ready to eat. There's going to be some interesting changes in how we produce food today.
We're going to go here in a second to the audience and be thinking of your question, but maybe, I don't know, there's one more question between you all?
Yeah, one question that ties to that one and goes beyond the processing facility and gets into the producers. And Mark, maybe you would be the best one to answer this. McDonald's just released, last week, a commitment that they're not going to be buying poultry anymore that is produced with antibiotics, use it in a prevention measure or in a preventive way. So what is your take on that? And how do you think, the producers and the companies that are supplying McDonald's, they're going to react to that?
What I will say is it's a good example of how public demand and economics are going to drive decisions even before government and policy does. And so I think there's a fair amount of interest due to antibiotic resistance to reduce the antibiotics that are fed routinely in our food chain. And the government is trying to figure out how to get their arms around that. But industry, because of public demand, is going to potentially self-regulate or make some changes before it is mandated. I think there's still a pretty significant gap between the science of some of this and public perception. So I think one of the ways that I'm hoping industry and government and higher ed can work together in a more collaborative way is to determine what are the big questions or issues out there, and then how can a research model at a land-grant place like us answer that question and provide public information that is not biased and that can be used to make solid decisions. So when we think about food residues, when we think about efficiency of feeding our planet, when we think about sustainability and what does that mean, I think there's a lot of biases out there and potential misinformation that are driving where we're going versus solid information. And so I guess I would be a strong proponent to say, what are the big questions? Is it healthier, or is it more sustainable, or is it more appropriate from an animal welfare to do this? Well, let's ask ourselves that question and let's measure it, and then let's provide the information versus having a lot of finger pointing, if you will.
So that consumer demand can be a very positive force, but then if it's significantly misinformed, it can take us that direction. All right, do we have questions? We know we've got some wandering microphones out there, so if we have questions from the audience, you can catch one of their attentions. We have one up here, he's coming. If we can get the next question kind of queued up. We got
This is a 3-in-1, but no speech. So Food Safety Modernization Act, December 2010, last hurrah of the Democratic Congress. Do you guys think it made food more safe and food safety more modern? 1. 2, for the big massive processors versus the smaller scale processors. Thanks.
Who wants to jump in on that one?
So I'm going to answer that and say yes, but it's not very apparent how. Because again, sort of since coming to CSU about a year and a half ago and starting to interact with more of certainly the regional companies, JBS, Leprino, even some of the beverage industries around here, it's on their radar, and I think we've heard that from even up here on the stage. Some are already taking steps internally to measure more things. So I think the piece that's not so apparent is what are they communicating to the rest of us about what they're learning and how they're learning it. So I think progress is being made, but it's not in a formal regulatory sense quite yet. But I think it's raising the bar of expectation. May just be as motivated by the Food Safety Modernization Act as some of the pressures from consumers you've heard here, right, who want to know. That may actually be more of a forcing function than the Food Safety Modernization Act.
Any others want to answer that? Or?
I'll try. I worked for Chipotle for 4 years, and I think they're a brilliant company and driven by innovation on their own means with culinary innovation. And they're now obviously very large, and I worked with them with small scale producers as well as big scale producers. And so it's interesting because local produce can be very safe, very nutritious, and then it can't. And so it has to have guidelines, and big produce can be that as well. It takes a month maybe in transit or longer, and so is it safe when it gets to the consumer and used by the consumer? So both have their issues in certain ways, and so it has to be addressed continually. It's a continuous improvement, food safety.
Any other questions from the audience? I have one question for Carlos, coming from the international perspective in a sense. So where is the United States in here? Are we kind of ahead of the game in the sense of food safety, or I'm just curious of your experiences that?
I mean, food sustainability?
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the yields and the technology that we apply here in US and the amount of food that we produce with the resources that we have available, I think US is way ahead of the game. In fact, US has been exporting a lot of technologies, overseas, and I think Colorado is a great opportunity, to play a very important role in helping other countries in reaching, the same level. I mean, look at dairy, for instance. I mean, a dairy cow produces on average 20,000 pounds of milk per year here. I mean, you go to India, it's 2,000. I mean, it's not. I mean, if you look at their systems and everything, they're never gonna reach 20,000, but for sure they can do a better job. And when you have higher yields, it means that you are doing more with the resources that you have available. So I think US is doing a very good job. Water, I think as we saw during the discussions at the other panel, I think water is one big issue for US, and we really have to be concerned about it. And apart from that, I think US is in the right pathway, and all those commitments that I mentioned to you, US has been very active in those. US companies, we work a lot of.
And you work more with companies than with governments, it sounds like. From your
we work a lot with companies, and a lot of them are very concerned about sustainability, not only because it's a hot topic or because it's beautiful or because they're concerned about the wild animals, but it's a reputational risk to them. And many companies are also looking at a risk to their supply in a sense that they're seeing reduce in the amount of products they have for themselves, the inputs they need for their production systems. Coca-Cola, for instance, is very concerned about water. JBS, for instance, is very concerned about cattle. They could be processing much more cattle than they are today because there's just not enough cattle available. And And I think, the private sector is the one who's going to be driving, sustainability. As I said, because of reputational risks and also because of their concerns about their supply and sourcing.
Did we get a question from the audience during that time? We've got a couple minutes left here.
Yeah, I just want to ask, our food system is blamed, perhaps not justifiably, for the obesity crisis and diabetes and on and on and on. Do you see any sort of innovations that will be market-driven that will correct that in some fashion over the next 20, 30 years? Is that something that demands government intervention and regulation? The soda tax and that sort of thing, or do you see consumers driving that in some fashion?
I think Laurie has the answer.
I see in my career, and I partner with government, industry, and academic scientists, and in my career, I have seen that consumers drive most of the change, and I love the new trend of no added sugar in foods. I was at the Natural and Organic Expo in Anaheim. That's 70,000 attendees, 2,700 vendors, and the trends coming down the pipeline is just, when I first started studying food science 30 years ago, my professors love them, they're very smart, but it was the mecca of the high processed industry, and they thought that organic was a trend. And so consumers absolutely have input to drive industry to change, and industry definitely listens and does give people what they want.
Any other responses to that, Tom?
Yeah, I guess, Tom, my response is I was shocked how many people participated in the microbiome project in the United States by shipping in fecal samples of themselves to understand what they've eaten. I guess that's a way of saying that people are very, well, I think people are much more aware of how food affects their health than they ever have been before, and that's just because we are learning much more about wellness and how 3 meals a day factors into that wellness, or as some will say now, skip a day of eating and you'll be healthier. But so I think that way leads to having a little bit more of a democratization of understanding of what food does to us. That I don't think relieves the industry of keeping the food system safe and generally having people trust the industry. And so we'll always have that issue of trust. But I think the average consumer is going to be a lot more informed about the interplay between nutrition and health in the coming years, and I think that will help.
All right. I want to thank the panelists once again for your time today. And,